Hey, this is Kieran.
And this is Tim.
And together we are
The Oddpod
Comedy
Podcast.
That's right, and this is something new to us, and the point of the Oddpod Comedy Podcast is we're to shed the light on what's happening in the Townsville comedy community, and over the coming weeks or coming shows, you're going to get familiar with a lot of our local talent. We're going to have guests, we're going to have great topics, isn't that right, Kieran?
That's right, and on today's show, we're going to be having a look at bad crocodiles in North Queensland. We know there's a lot of crocodiles down here, or up here, sorry, and we're going to...
Bad crocodiles.
Yeah, you know about them.
Oh, only the good ones.
Oh. What else are we going to be looking at?
Not only that, though, but we're also going to be talking about fingertips and the law.
Fingertips and the law. And then we're going to have a look at flower pot boobies, which is a very, a subject that's really close to my heart.
It's hard to keep abreast of it, really, flower pot boobies. But you know what happens when you think of pots and flowers? I think of blossom. You know what happens when you take one letter out of the word blossom?
What happens?
You get bosom.
Oh, shit. Okay, and then we're going to be having a look at our Mayor, Jenny Hill. She's very graciously decided to give our viewers some advice. So we asked some questions, alright?
We call it WWJD.
What would Jenny do?
Represent.
Okay? Help me, Oddpod, alright? That's her segment, and she has taken it fabulously.
But moving on, we're going to kick the show off. We're going to introduce our first guest ever for the series of Oddpod Comedy Podcast.
Elevator. She is known to you and me. She's a prominent comedian in the Townsville scene, and she's been doing it for a number of years, and we're very excited to have her on.
That's right, and guys, guess what? And girls, we're going to show some footage of her right now so you can get familiar. This is her performing at the Kerwin Tavern, Hump Day Comedy. Check it out.
I pulled my hand out very quick. I was scared. And there's a giant centipede dangling off of my finger. And I'm freaking, and I tossed it off. I mean, didn't toss it off. I flicked it off. Shit. I always do this to myself. But the thing is, when it was flying, I swear I could hear the wind whistling through all of its legs. I don't know why it occurred to me. I'm like, wouldn't that be a funny thing? Would be like a prostitute centipede. Like all the legs that would have to open to get started. It'd be like... I'm gonna arachnid your world. Yeah, so fuck centipedes.
Come a comedian. They come and go. They come and go.
In case you're not listening, we've got Elevator.
We got Elevator with us. It's very good to have you on the podcast, Ella. Thank you. This is the first Oddpod Comedy Podcast, and you are our first guest. How does that feel?
It's an honour, and thank you for the colourful welcoming.
Well, it was a kind of colourful introduction, but I guess what we've just seen was you in action at the Kerwin Tavern. You've even hosted at the Kerwin Tavern before. I guess doing stand-up and being a host is something different, but how did you graduate to being a host? How did you start in comedy?
I've always loved comedy, and I just think it's beautiful art. You get to have fun, and you get to make people laugh. And I saw a flyer, Comedy Generation were running a workshop, which led people into becoming comedians. So I jumped in on that, and here I am.
Yeah, and 4 years later, you're up hosting the show, so obviously it's a natural thing for you. And as you said, it's an art form, and you are an artist of many different traits and kinds. What do you play guitar?
Yep.
You try singing? And you also
brutal.
Just a backhanded compliment straight away. And you do painting and you do hip hop dancing. How does comedy stand out for you? And do you enjoy it out of the most?
Yeah, it's different. Everything's different. All of them are different. So I sort of think that when you're painting, you can kind of get away with it being like, if you want to get high and be in your underwear, you can do that. But with comedy, that's
you can
probably
still do that with comedy.
You could, but I mean,
I actually challenge you to try it.
Challenge accepted.
It's creepy.
Yep.
You heard it here.
But, you know...
Tim's done it.
I was so ready for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, you know, we thought about performing in our underwear before. I performed in my underwear with Kieran, but it wasn't on stage and no one was watching. But on another topic, let's just go to our talking points. Let's get back on track. Now, you mentioned before bad crocodiles. What's the go with this?
So we've got actually some bad crocodiles in Townsville, right? More crocodiles, double the amount of crocodiles have been sighted this year than last year. Something like 648 crocodiles have been sighted. Yeah.
Wow.
That's a lot of crocodiles.
That's right, yeah. So
Now, it's one thing being a crocodile that's been sighted, but how are they being sighted as bad crocodiles? Like, it's...
see, that's the thing that I don't get. Like, why are they naughty crocodiles compared to regular crocodiles? You know, like, what's...
It's a bit judgmental,
I
I think. Yeah.
I think it's rude, yeah.
I don't know where a crocodile crosses the line between a good and then he's bad. Is he breaking the law? You know, is he...
It's
Yeah,
really
probably-
bad. It's really, I feel like they're being victimized, and, you know, if they were a human and they were a race, you know, there would be something really happening. There'd be a hashtag Me Crocodile movement happening. It's bad. And, you know, it raises the question, what makes them bad? Like, what, does a good crocodile exist? What makes a good crocodile compared to a bad crocodile?
Probably just helping his crocodile brethren out, you know.
helping the old lady across the street,
Yeah.
rather than, you know, going fucking chomp, like...
You know, volunteering at the local soup kitchen, just giving soup to homeless people.
Yeah, and orphan crocodiles, you know, looking out for them. And
Orphan crocodiles?
Don't
Well,
forget them.
that's a cracking question, because they are born in eggs. Born in eggs, but, you know, talking about laying eggs, let's lay a different topic out there. We think about, you know, topics, we think of tips of fingers, and when you think of tips of fingers lately in Townsville, you think of police. Reason being is, crime in Townsville, as we know, is pretty bad.
Yeah, well, it's been bad for a while now, but what happened with these fingertips?
Well, you know, it didn't even happen in Kerwin High. This is something really bad. Like, this happened on the streets of Townsville. There was this guy, and he was on the run from police. Like, he already had convictions. Like, he's one bad guy. He actually looks like Matt Scott. Not that Matt Scott's mad. He's a mad football player, but he's not mentally mad. Don't bash me, Matt Scott. But basically, this guy looks like Matt Scott. He's on parole. He's taken off his ankle bracelet, which is, you know...
Probably a hard thing to get off.
Yeah, that's
hard
like...
thing to get off.
Have
It's
you
like-
ever had an ankle bracelet, Ella?
No, I haven't yet.
What is this?
I'm all about...
A liar in our midst.
This is just playing. It's
Caught
just
out!
But that doesn't have GPS on it like his tracker did, and that's how they got onto it.
Is he like MacGyver? I heard those things are very hard to take off.
Well, I guess MacGyver had a mullet, and if you have a mullet, you're 2 steps away from an ankle bracelet. But that's MacGyver. This guy didn't have a mullet, though. He was one stocky guy, he had neck tattoos. I don't know if there's a fact, but I'd pay my money on it. Long story short, though, the police were chasing this guy 4 days after he's been on the run. He's in Navara, tearing down Kelso, I think is really where it happened. Are we surprised? I don't know. I call Kelso the Silk Road, really, for many reasons. You put the lines together. Lines. But anyway, basically, the police have tried to pull this man over. They're in a chase, and this police officer has tried, they've collided cars, and while they've collided cars trying to pull this guy over, this poor officer doing his job and his duty, nothing against him, sympathy for the police, but he's lost his fingertips in the accident.
How? How did that happen? Like, did he have his fingertips out the window? Like, what?
I don't think it's protocol, you know, driving like this as a police officer while you're in a chase with your hand out the thing. Like,
Yeah, gonna get him.
yeah, I got him, boys. And, you know, like, they've just clashed cars and chopped fingers. I don't know, but all we know is
Chaos.
it is chaos, and all we know is the police have more than one set
Also,
of fingerprints to
specifically,
find.
like, the fingertips.
the tips, not the hand, not the arm, just the fingertips. That's quite precise. That's, yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of fingertips, got a story about tits. So, a lady in the UK is making flower pot boobies.
Flower pot boobies.
Flower pot boobies, that's right. She's
Sounds like nome of my business.
Get out of here. Literally leave right now. We've got, like, this lady, right, getting people to send pictures of their boobs into her, and she's making custom boob flower pots, right? So they're just pots with, like, heaving breasts hanging off the front.
Heaving. I
Yeah.
like this descriptive.
Yeah.
That's art. I think it's actually probably a creepy dude trying to find a way in, you know?
But
That's what I
it's like the new accessory to have in your garden, though. Like as I said, like we used to see gnomes, we used to see plants. Now you're gonna see tits. What's the go with that? But obviously, you know, comment below if you have the chance. Why would you have breast pots in your garden? Where would you put a fucking
Where would you
pot?
put it? You've been a landscaper. Where would you put your
in the bin.
titty pot?
Honestly, I wouldn't have one.
In the compost bin, but it depends if it's biodegradable. Let's think about that.
Yeah, this is a good point.
Yeah. I want them to make one of just like a dick hanging up the front.
Yeah, but you know, and I guess you could have it could be a hanging plant, and you could have like 2 hanging pots below it, which could make
Talk about well hung. Speaking of well hung, let's move on to our segment called "What Would Jenny Do?" We're going to.
You've heard, like we've heard of what would Jesus do. We've heard of WW1, WW2. Now it's WWJD. What would Jenny do? So I'll tell you what. Let's listen to this question one of our listeners has put into us, and let's hear what Jenny has to say about it.
So we've got a message here from one of our viewers with a serious issue. Help me, Oddpod. As a woman in the colder weather, I pee with my legs tightly together to stay warm, but it takes twice as long. Also, the excess pressure causes splashback. Is there some way to fix this? This sounds like a perfect opportunity to find out what would Jenny do?
Ease off somewhat on the restrictions.
What would Jenny do? Well, that's what Jenny would do. But there's certain things that Jenny wouldn't do. And I wouldn't expect her to do this. We're about to ask 3 very hard questions.
That's right. Ella, are you ready for 3 hard questions?
3 hard questions without warning.
Yeah, sure.
First question. Ella, obviously you know that in Townsville we have a lot of problems with car theft.
Fuck.
Yeah.
Cars are being stolen left and right, up and down.
The street.
Okay.
Knowing this, Ella,
Yeah.
what would you say is your favourite Cars film?
Cars. Nah. I haven't actually watched Cars. None of the movies.
Just answer the question.
Answer the question.
I watched Moana. That was a good movie.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I am slightly offended.
This is problematic.
Why would you connect Moana with stealing cars?
That sounds a bit racist.
Obviously, she's a bit animated. But I don't think she'd ever steal a car. But we're talking about people stealing cars, and that leads to our next question. Question 2. Kids are stealing cars. We've spoken about this. And we assimilate why these kids steal cars. It could be boredom, no direction, or drugs. The 3 Ds. The question is, kids are breaking into cars. But when are we going to hear about a kid breaking out of a car?
But they're stuck in the car.
You tell me. I'm asking the question.
You're given the answers. Give us the answer.
Well, if you're stuck in the car, there's always the latch that you can, lift and let yourself out. Logic.
A question inside a question. Have you been stuck inside a car?
Not stuck. I farted in my car once, and that was the only time I felt stuck. Like, that's the only time.
Okay. I think that's question answered, Kieran.
Obviously, there's a lot of car theft. We've covered that.
Lots of cars.
Lots of cars being stolen. Okay.
Numbers game.
Too many cars. All right, maybe too many cars. Okay.
Lots of cars!
And this is the question, Ella. Will we ever run out of cars?
I can't see it coming. Just putting that out there. So that's
What do you think would happen?
That's the problem. No one sees it coming, Ella. When are we going to run out of cars?
What would happen?
Oh, we'll ride bikes.
We will ride bikes. That's... Obviously, we can't answer when will we run out of cars, but we can answer what we can do when we run out of cars. And that's why you should vote Ella at the next election to be the president or the mayor of Townsville. Well, look, I'm glad that we got through that. You glad, Kieran?
I am so glad that we got through that.
Awesome, Ella.
100%.
Awesome. So that was 3 tough questions without warning. And look, we're just going to push on through and talk about what's happening with Townsville Comedy Generation, because we always have big shit happening.
Yep.
And what's happening next, Ella's about to tell you.
Okay, so we got Bart Freeband coming to Townsville on the 20th of July. He's going to be at the Herbert Hotel. It's $15 online to get your tickets, or $20 at the door. If you can't make it to that, come to one of our Hump Day comedy open mic nights. That's right, it is a hump day, and it's the first Wednesday of every month, and it's free at the Kerwin Tavern.
So before we end, I'd like to really give a big thanks to Ella for coming on our podcast. Thank you so much, Ella.
Hey, thank you, Ella.
Thank you.
Very patient.
All right, first Oddpod comedy podcast. That's great.
Very first one. I'll tell you what. A couple of things I've learned. Ella's the most patient woman in Kelso, because we've both got no stab wounds by the end of that. But I'll tell you what. A lot more shenanigans to come throughout the next. New people, new jokes. Still going to be me and Kieran. No Ella, but I guess that's the saddest thing about it. Tell you what, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun. It was. It was really fun.
I just really couldn't believe that Ella didn't know much about cars.
Yeah, was she even born in the 90s?
I think she was.
Doesn't seem like it.
That's really fucked up.
Yeah.
Or is it fucked down?